Jax stood at the edge of the training yard, his eyes fixed on the towering figures around him. Alien soldiers moved with confidence, their long limbs and strong muscles showing years of training. Some had scales that glinted in the sunlight, others had thick armor-like skin. They laughed and talked in a language Jax only partly understood. Every sound felt like a reminder that he did not belong here. He was smaller than all of them, his human frame thin and untested. The instructors blew sharp whistles, signaling the start of the day's drills. Aliens began lifting heavy objects, running obstacle courses and practicing their combat moves. Jax followed their orders as best as he could. Every step felt awkward. His jumps were shorter, his punches lighter, and his movements slower than the others. The aliens noticed immediately. They began whispering among themselves, pointing at him and snickering. "Look at the human," one alien said, his voice sharp. "He cannot even lift that rock." Another laughed. "Maybe he is only good for cleaning or carrying messages. Nothing more." Jax felt their words like a weight on his shoulders, but he said nothing. He focused on the task in front of him, forcing himself to block out the laughter. Inside, a quiet determination grew. He had faced challenges before. On Earth, humans had always been underestimated, laughed at, and called weak. But Jax knew that humans were not weak. Strength was not only in muscle, it was in heart, mind, and will. An instructor approached, a huge alien with 4 arms and a face that looked like carved stone. He looked down at Jax with curiosity and suspicion. "Human," he said, "you will try the agility course. Do not slow the others." "Yes, sir," Jax replied calmly. The aliens lining the course stepped aside, expecting the human to stumble and fall. Jax started. The first obstacle was a series of low walls. He jumped and climbed, landing with surprising balance. The aliens made surprised noises, but some still muttered insults. "Lucky jump," one said. It was nothing. The second obstacle was a rope swing across a pit. Jax grabbed the rope, swung with all his weight, and landed safely on the other side. A few aliens blinked, their snickers fading. Jax did not pause. He moved on to the climbing nets, the heavy logs, and the balance beams. Every step he took was steady, every movement controlled. The aliens began to watch quietly, their mockery slowing. Finally, he reached the last challenge, a heavy training dummy meant to test strength. It was bigger than Jax and far heavier than he looked capable of handling. The aliens around him laughed loudly. "He will never lift it," someone shouted. "Watch him struggle." Jax crouched, taking a deep breath. His fingers gripped the edges of the dummy. He focused, feeling the weight against his arms, imagining the dummy lighter than it seemed. With a smooth motion he lifted it, just enough to shift it from one place to another. The yard went silent. Some aliens' mouths hung open. Some stepped back, unsure what they had just seen. The instructor's 4 arms crossed, and he looked at Jax with a hint of respect. "Interesting," he said softly, almost to himself. Jax set the dummy down carefully. He did not smile or boast. He only stood straight and nodded, ready for the next task. The aliens around him exchanged confused glances. Many had expected him to fail completely, to be weak and useless. But Jax had proven something small but important. Humans were not to be dismissed so easily. After the exercises, the recruits gathered for lunch. Jax sat quietly at the edge of the group, eating the rations he had brought. Some aliens stared at him, whispering to each other. A few came closer, pretending to be friendly, asking how he had done the impossible lift. Jax answered politely, never showing anger or pride, only calm focus. That night, as the recruits rested in the barracks, Jax lay on his cot, thinking about the day. He knew the real challenge was not just physical. The real challenge was winning respect in a place where every alien had been taught to believe humans were weak. He smiled slightly to himself. If they thought he was small and fragile, that was fine. Their underestimation was his advantage. Jax closed his eyes, listening to the strange sounds of the starbase. Somewhere deep inside he felt a surge of confidence. He would show them. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with action. Every task, every challenge, every obstacle would be an opportunity to prove that a human could achieve what no alien expected. The human spark, the quiet resilience, was something they had never understood, but Jax intended to make them see. The first day had been hard. He had been mocked, laughed at, and underestimated. Yet, in their laughter, he had found clarity. Humans were not built like aliens. Their power was different, hidden, waiting for the right moment. And Jax would be that moment. As the night deepened and the stars of Zethar Prime shone through the window, Jax felt a quiet determination settle in his chest. Tomorrow would be harder. The aliens would test him again. They would push him, challenge him, and doubt him. But he would endure. Humans always endured. And when the time came, he would lift more than just weights. He would lift the eyes of all who had mocked him, showing them the strength they never imagined. The next morning, the sun rose over the starbase, casting long shadows across the training yard. Jack stood with the other recruits, waiting for the instructor to announce the day's challenge. He could feel the eyes of the alien soldiers on him. Some still whispered, some still laughed quietly. The memory of yesterday's lifting of the training dummy had spread. Some were curious, but most were skeptical. The instructor stepped forward, towering over the recruits. "Today," he said, his voice deep and commanding, "you will lift the grav spear. It is the heaviest weapon in our arsenal. Only the strongest and most skilled may lift it. Fail and you fail this trial." The grav spear was massive. It had a long, thick shaft of unknown metal that shone with a faint blue glow. The blade at the end was larger than a human, sharp and heavy. The weapon rested on the ground, and even standing beside it, Jax felt its power. Alien soldiers had struggled with it for years. Many had given up after only a few attempts. The first recruits approached. A tall, green-skinned alien grunted as he crouched, gripping the weapon. He tried to lift it. His muscles strained, veins bulging on his arms. He pulled with all his strength, but the grav spear barely moved. He groaned, stumbling backward, and the weapon fell with a heavy thud. Laughter and chatter rippled through the other recruits. Next, a four-armed alien stepped forward. His extra arms made the task easier, but even he struggled. He lifted it slightly, then dropped it, panting heavily. The instructor shook his head. "Insufficient," he said. Jax's turn came. The aliens around him exchanged glances, some openly snickering. "He will fail too," one whispered. "Watch and laugh." Jax walked to the grav spear. He did not speak. He looked at the weapon, studying its weight, its balance. He bent his knees, planted his feet firmly, and wrapped his hands around the shaft. The aliens laughed louder. One even said, "Go ahead, human. Struggle, embarrass yourself." Jax took a deep breath. He focused. He felt the weight pressing down, heavy but not impossible. He remembered Earth, how humans had carried, lifted, and moved things in ways others thought impossible. He remembered the long days of training, the endurance of the human body and mind. He let the muscle strength come, but also the quiet focus inside him, the determination that never wavered. Slowly he lifted the grav spear. The aliens gasped. The weapon rose off the ground, steady and controlled. Jax adjusted his hands, finding the perfect balance. He held it in front of him, straight and unmoving. The silence was deafening. The aliens had not expected this. Some took a step back, disbelief written across their faces. "Impossible," muttered one. The instructor's eyes widened. He leaned forward, inspecting the human closely. Jax moved the weapon slightly, tilting it from side to side, testing its balance. It felt like the grav spear was light in his hands, though he knew it was not. He could feel every ounce of its weight, yet he controlled it with calm strength. The other recruits stepped closer, watching in shock. They had never seen a human do something like this. Many had trained their whole lives for this trial and failed. The human, small and thin, held the weapon like it was a stick. The instructor nodded slowly. "Interesting. Very interesting." Jax lowered the grav spear gently, setting it back on the ground. He did not smile or boast. He only nodded and stepped back, ready to continue. The aliens whispered among themselves, their mocking fading. Some were curious, some were cautious, and a few were openly impressed. One of the strongest recruits, a large blue-skinned alien with jagged teeth, stepped forward. He tried again, pushing himself harder than before. The weapon moved slightly, but he could not lift it fully. He grunted in frustration, sweat dripping down his face. Jax watched quietly, noting the effort. He did not feel superior. He felt ready for the next challenge, knowing that this was only the beginning. After the trial, the instructor gathered all the recruits. "This human," he said, pointing at Jax, "has shown potential that we have not seen in centuries. Not just strength but focus, control, and determination. These qualities are rare." Some aliens scowled, unwilling to admit respect. Others nodded quietly, understanding that humans were different. Jax remained calm. He did not seek attention or praise. He only prepared for the days ahead, knowing that more challenges would come. That night, Jax sat alone in the barracks, examining the grav spear in his mind. He knew lifting it once was not enough. He had to master it, understand it, and use it with skill. The aliens would continue to test him, push him, and doubt him. But he was ready. Humans thrived under pressure. Humans adapted. And humans, when underestimated, could achieve things no one expected. The impossible task had been completed, but Jax's journey was just beginning. He felt a quiet smile form on his lips. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more challenges, and perhaps more disbelief. But he would face them all. With every lift, every move, every quiet action, he would show that humans were not weak. They were extraordinary. After the impossible task, the training yard was quiet. The alien recruits moved slower than usual, their eyes still on Jax. They could not stop thinking about what they had just seen. The smallest human had lifted the grav spear with ease, something none of them had done before. Whispers ran through the ranks. Some could not believe it. Others were curious, studying him closely. Jax walked calmly through the yard, following the next orders of the instructor. He moved with quiet confidence, careful but steady. The aliens stepped aside, giving him space. Some looked at him with suspicion, as if they expected the human to collapse or drop something at any moment. None of them dared mock him now. During the next drill, Jax was paired with two of the strongest recruits for a combat exercise. They assumed it would be easy to overpower him, but as soon as the drill began, they realized something was wrong. Jax moved faster than they expected. He dodged their strikes with quick, precise movements. His punches were smaller, but they were accurate and strong in the right places. The aliens stumbled, surprised at how effective his technique was. "Human moves differently," one alien whispered. "Not like us. Something is strange about him." The instructor watched quietly, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He had seen strength before, but not like this. The human combined focus, balance, and speed in a way that seemed impossible for someone so small. Each movement showed discipline and thought. Jax was not just strong. He understood his own limits and worked within them. After the drill, the aliens gathered around, asking questions. "How do you move so fast?" one asked. "How can you lift what we cannot?" another added. Jax answered calmly, explaining that humans train differently, using endurance and technique more than brute force. He spoke softly, without pride, but every word made the aliens more curious. Even the top recruits who had mocked him before were now watching him closely. They tried to mimic his movements, studying his balance, his grip, and his posture. None could copy it perfectly. Every time they failed, they glanced at him, puzzled and frustrated. Jax remained focused on the next task, ignoring the attention. The instructor called all recruits to a special lesson. He spoke about strategy, strength, and teamwork. Jax listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Unlike many aliens who relied solely on raw power, he combined what he learned with his natural human abilities. The instructor noticed this immediately. "Interesting," he murmured to himself. "This human, he understands more than expected. Not just strength but thought, observation, and control. Fascinating." Some aliens began to approach Jax privately, asking him to teach small techniques or tips. He nodded politely and demonstrated, careful not to show arrogance. Slowly, the human became a center of curiosity. Even those who had hated him now wanted to understand him. Outside the training yard, in quiet corners of the starbase, aliens whispered to each other. "Humans are strange," one said. "They are small, yet they are stronger than many of us. They think differently. It is remarkable." Another nodded. "We must watch him closely. There is something unusual here." Jax, unaware of most of the whispers, continued training with quiet determination. He focused on mastering the drills, learning the alien techniques, and improving his own. His goal was not to show off but to grow stronger and smarter. The aliens' curiosity only reminded him that humans were underestimated everywhere. That had always been an advantage. During a late-night observation, the instructor came to watch Jax practice lifting and moving heavy objects. Jax worked alone, testing his balance and grip. The grav spear lay nearby and he lifted it repeatedly, experimenting with different techniques. The instructor leaned against a wall, arms crossed, silently impressed. "This human," he said quietly, "is more than just strong. He adapts, thinks, and observes. There is a mind behind the muscle. Perhaps, humans are different than we believed." Jax finished his practice and set the weapon down gently. He wiped sweat from his brow and looked at the stars above the starbase. He thought about Earth, his family, and the humans he had left behind. He smiled faintly. Humans were small, underestimated, and ordinary to others, but they had hidden strength, resilience, and creativity. Aliens would soon understand that if they survived long enough to see it. Word of Jax's ability spread quietly through the ranks. He was no longer mocked openly, but he was a source of fascination. Aliens watched him move, lifted objects, and trained with precision. Some felt jealousy, others respect, and a few felt fear they could not name. They had expected a weak human recruit, but they found something else entirely. As night fell, Jax lay on his cot in the barracks thinking about the reactions he had seen. Curiosity was growing and he knew it. Aliens would observe him more, challenge him more, and push him harder. That was exactly what he wanted. Humans thrived under challenge. Humans adapted. And Jax was ready to show them exactly what humans were capable of. The awe and curiosity of the aliens were not his goal, but it was a sign he was on the right path. The real tests were still ahead, and Jax smiled quietly to himself. He would face them, learn from them, and rise stronger than ever. Aliens would have to pay attention now because the human recruit was no longer just a small figure to mock. He was a mystery, and mysteries could be dangerous. The days passed, and Jax continued his training with quiet determination. The aliens no longer laughed at him openly, but he could feel their eyes on him constantly. Some watched with curiosity, others with caution, and a few with a grudging respect they would not yet admit aloud. Every drill, every exercise, every obstacle became a stage where humans and aliens measured each other, and Jax moved with calm focus, showing what he could do without needing praise. During a combat drill, Jax was paired with 3 of the top recruits, the strongest aliens in his group. They had expected an easy victory, thinking the human would falter quickly. But as soon as the drill began, Jax moved with precision and skill. He dodged their attacks with ease and countered with perfectly timed moves. His punches were small but effective, hitting vulnerable spots that the aliens did not expect. The aliens tried to overpower him, but they stumbled, frustrated and shocked. One of them, a large, purple-skinned alien with sharp claws, paused mid-strike. He fights differently, he muttered. He is not like us. He is strange. The instructor watched silently, nodding to himself. Strange, yes, but effective, he said. There is wisdom in this human strength. He thinks before he moves, studies before he acts. That is why he succeeds. Over the next few days, Jax continued to excel. He lifted heavier weapons, ran faster obstacle courses, and adapted quickly to new drills. The aliens began to notice patterns in his training. Unlike them, who relied mostly on brute strength, Jax combined his speed, focus, and endurance. He anticipated challenges and adjusted his movements in real time. He did not need to push harder than he could. He pushed smarter. Some of the recruits who had mocked him at first began to approach him privately, asking for advice or tips. Jax showed them small techniques, careful to remain humble. He never boasted, only demonstrated and explained. Slowly, respect began to grow. The aliens realized that strength alone was not enough to master their training. Strategy, focus, and mental discipline mattered just as much. Jax had them all, and it was a lesson they had not expected from a human. During a particularly difficult endurance test, the recruits had to carry heavy supplies across uneven terrain while dodging obstacles. Many aliens struggled, panting and stumbling. Jax carried his load steadily, moving at a steady pace, never rushing, never losing balance. A few aliens tried to match his pace but failed, exhausted. One muttered, He is not just strong, he never tires. How is this possible? The instructor observed silently from above, noting Jax's performance. He had trained hundreds of soldiers in his life, but none had combined mental focus, discipline, and physical skill like this. Perhaps humans are underestimated, he said quietly. Perhaps we have judged them too harshly. By the end of the week, a shift had begun in the ranks. The aliens who had once mocked Jax now looked at him differently. They no longer assumed he would fail, they watched to see what he would do next. Even the strongest recruits began to treat him as an equal in practice, though some still struggled with their pride. Jax accepted the respect quietly, knowing it was earned, not given. One day during a weapons drill, the instructor called all the recruits together. Humans are smaller than us, yes, he said. They may seem weak at first glance. But this one, the human Jax, has shown that size is not everything. Strength comes from focus, adaptability, and determination. Pay attention to what he does, for there is much to learn. The word spread quickly. Aliens whispered among themselves, some nodding in agreement, some still skeptical but curious. Jax continued to train, but he could feel the change. He was no longer the weak recruit. He was someone to be watched, studied, and respected. During free time, a few of the younger recruits approached him. They asked questions about his training, about how humans work differently. Jax answered politely, showing patience and understanding. He never used his strength to intimidate, only to demonstrate what was possible with discipline. Slowly, admiration grew among the younger soldiers, and even some older ones began to take note. By the end of the week, the human recruit had become a quiet symbol. He was not boastful or loud, but his actions spoke for him. Aliens who had doubted him were now cautious, some even seeking his guidance in drills. The instructor observed this change with interest. This human, he is not just strong. He inspires others to do better, to think differently. Perhaps humans are not as weak as we believed. That night, Jack sat alone in the barracks reflecting on the week. He had faced mockery, doubt, and challenges that would have broken others. Yet he had endured. The respect he had earned was not his goal, but it was proof that his way of training, thinking, and moving was effective. Humans were underestimated everywhere, but when given a chance they could rise above expectation. He smiled faintly, feeling a quiet pride. The aliens had started to see him differently, but the real tests were still ahead. They would continue to challenge him, push him, and doubt him. And he would continue to rise, showing not only strength but the true spirit of humanity. The rising respect of the aliens was only the beginning. Soon they would see that humans were a force to be reckoned with, not to be ignored or dismissed. Jax lay down, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and the faint hum of the starbase around him. He was ready for whatever came next. Humans endured. Humans adapted. And Jax would prove that humans could be more than anyone imagined. Weeks passed, and Jax's reputation had grown across the entire training yard. The smallest human recruit had become impossible to ignore. Aliens who had once mocked him now studied his every movement, curious and cautious. Even the instructor, who had doubted humans at first, now acknowledged that Jax was extraordinary. Today, a new challenge awaited the recruits. The instructor brought out the graph spear again, along with several other heavy weapons used only by elite soldiers. "This will test your strength, skill, and control," he announced. The aliens lined up, their expressions serious. None laughed at Jax anymore, but some still doubted quietly. They wanted to see if his previous successes were luck or true skill. Jax stepped forward, calm and focused. He examined the weapons carefully, feeling their weight and balance. He remembered all his training, every drill, every obstacle, every lesson. The graph spear felt familiar in his hands, almost like an extension of his own body. The aliens around him whispered, eyes wide. As the challenge began, Jax moved quickly, lifting the graph spear and testing its limits. He adjusted its weight effortlessly, shifting it from side to side, spinning it slightly and holding it steady. The other recruits struggled, panting, grunting, and stumbling. Many had trained their whole lives to master this weapon, but the human made it look simple. Some aliens tried to approach him, offering tips or advice, but Jax did not need them. His movements were precise and confident. Each step, each lift, each adjustment showed not just strength but intelligence. He thought about every angle, every force, and every possibility. He moved faster than they expected, adapting instantly when the instructor changed the challenge. The instructor watched silently, arms crossed, impressed. "He has mastered more than strength," he said quietly. "He has mastered focus, observation, and adaptation. A human can learn and react in ways even our best soldiers struggle to match." Other recruits began to whisper among themselves. "He is unstoppable," one said. "How can a human do this?" Another nodded. "We cannot ignore him anymore. He is different, special." By midday the aliens' attitudes had shifted completely. They no longer doubted Jax, and some even followed his lead in practice drills. The respect he had earned was growing into something more than curiosity, it was recognition. The instructors and top soldiers were beginning to see humans as a force to be reckoned with. During a break, one of the strongest recruits approached Jax cautiously. "I underestimated you," he said quietly. "You are not like any human we have trained with before. Teach me how you do this." Jax nodded politely and demonstrated simple techniques, showing balance, grip, and timing. He spoke calmly, explaining small details. The alien listened carefully, learning quickly, though he could not match the human's skill yet. Many others watched, taking mental notes, realizing that Jax was changing the way they all thought about humans. As evening fell, the instructor gathered the recruits for a final lesson. "This human has shown us that strength is not only measured by size or muscle," he said. "It is measured by focus, adaptability, and willpower. Humans may be small, but they are dangerous when underestimated. Remember this lesson well." The word spread through the ranks like wildfire. Aliens who had doubted humans began to treat them differently. Jax walked among them, calm and composed, his presence commanding attention without a word. He was no longer the small, mocked recruit. He had become a symbol of human potential, an example that strength came in many forms. That night in the barracks, Jax lay on his cot, thinking quietly. He had faced mockery, disbelief, and impossible challenges. Yet he had risen above all of it, showing that humans were more than appearances. He smiled faintly. The aliens had learned to respect him, but that was only the beginning. Humans could endure, adapt, and surpass expectations in ways no one imagined. The next day the training yard felt different. Aliens stepped aside for him now, some nodding in respect. Others watched him silently, learning from his every move. Even the strongest recruits approached with caution, knowing they could not ignore him. Jax carried the grav spear with ease, moving through drills with quiet confidence. He did not boast or gloat. His strength was in action, not words. By the end of the week, the small human recruit had changed the perception of everyone at the starbase. The aliens who once mocked him now deferred to his judgment, followed his example, and studied his movements. Jax had lifted more than just a weapon. He had lifted the minds of those who underestimated humans. He had shown that humans were capable, resilient, and extraordinary. As the stars of Zethar Prime shone above the barracks, Jax closed his eyes, feeling calm and satisfied. The journey was far from over, but the path ahead was clear. He had earned respect, curiosity, and acknowledgement. He had proven that humans could not be ignored, not because of size, not because of strength alone, but because of determination, intelligence, and heart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Jax was ready. He was more than a recruit now. He was a human who had shown an entire alien army that underestimating humanity was a mistake. And that lesson would stay with them forever.